Dr. Mike Warshawski rose to Instagram and YouTube fame largely because he was named the sexiest doctor alive in 2015. But aside from just being attractive, Dr. Mike has accumulated over 10 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, where he answers medical questions and provides medical infotainment-style content. This introduces a huge can of worms when it comes to medical ethics, because doctors are one of those professions that have a lot of incredibly specific rules. I've been keeping an eye on Dr. Mike for a while, and while he's had some hits and misses, as a whole I have been quite pleased. Let's hit on some of the highs and lows and what we can learn from them. And if you stick around till the end, I'll tell you about a similar problem I've been having and get your thoughts on what I should do about it. First, speculation. The issue of speculation was most readily apparent, at least on Dr. Mike's channel, when President Donald Trump got COVID. Every news outlet, whether left or right oriented, was on the all Trump, all the time content plan, and they were analyzing what every tweet or message or vague gesture could possibly mean.
Does he look okay? Some people thought he looked a little pale.
Some of them invited doctors on to talk about how Trump was doing and what it meant for the presidency and whether the fact that his hand shook a little meant that he was dying. Dr. Mike was invited to be on some of these shows and, given his reputation, was probably offered a decent chunk of change to do it, but he didn't. And he didn't comment on Trump's condition on his channel either. And this is kind of important. Doctors are seen as experts and their comments carry weight. After Fact magazine used a poll of psychiatrists to discredit presidential nominee Barry Goldwater in 1964, the Goldwater rule was introduced, which forbids psychiatrists from speculating on public figures' mental health. The American Medical Association has a similar rule, instructing physicians to refrain from making clinical diagnoses about individuals, like public officials, celebrities, persons in the news, they have not had the opportunity to personally examine. I can speculate about someone's health because I have no medical credentials, so nobody should believe me anyway. But actual doctors shouldn't. Dr. Mike, along with many other famous and non-famous physicians, have turned down a lot of publicity and money by sticking to this standard. And I applaud them for it. I will always applaud them for it. Just keep this in mind next time you see someone on the news talking about Biden's mental health or Trump's shaky hands. Because if they really have the credentials and experience to be commenting on those things, then they probably shouldn't be. The next thing we learn from Dr. Mike is likely his biggest scandal, when he faced significant backlash for having a lavish 31st birthday party at the end of 2020, with no masks or social distancing to be seen, even after publicly advocating for following COVID guidelines. Perhaps more interesting than that is the apology video he put out on his smaller channel addressing the controversy. Like most YouTube apology videos, it did not go over particularly well. Partially because he both tried to justify the behavior and say that he was wrong, and that never works. Let's just take a look at some chunks.
I went down to Miami. My friend surprised me with a private boat as a belated birthday present. And I was very grateful, I was excited. At the same time, I was a little cautious and nervous because we're in the midst of a pandemic. So I went on the CDC website and checked the guidance for wearing masks during water activities. I checked the local boat capacity guidelines, so we were well below that. And then I started thinking about individual risk. And that's something I talk to you guys quite frequently about. I get questions like, is it safe to go on a boat? Is it safe to fly? Is it safe to see my relatives? And there's rarely a one-size-fits-all answer because risk is a spectrum. So I looked at my own personal risk level. I'm young, I don't have health problems, I live alone so I don't put anyone else at risk. I'm going to be following the proper quarantine and testing protocols, returning back to New York. We're following all the testing, boat capacity, and travel guidelines. So I thought for me, this risk level was okay.
This is a really classic sequence of events, and basically how we all make decisions. First, we make intuitive, snap judgments about what we should do. And then afterwards, we rationalize why that snap judgment is the right decision. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt refers to this split mentality as the elephant and the rider, where our emotional brains, which are the elephant, decide where we should go, and then the rider, or our more rational frontal lobe, smart reasoning brains, justify why that's where he wanted to go in the first place, because deep down the rider can't actually stop the elephant from doing much. You can kind of hear the elephant as Mike is saying, I got there and I was surprised and I wanted to have fun with my friends. And then you see the rider going through and creating rationalizations and justifications for why that is an acceptable and correct decision. And I honestly think his justifications are pretty decent. Him and everyone else there made informed decisions about risk and then quarantined afterwards. There isn't a huge problem with that, except that it was hypocritical to his own stated stance. People also got upset because the apology wasn't so much for what he did as for the outcome of what he did.
The reason I'm saying this is because of the impact of my trip. The impact can harm the medical message that I've been delivering from the beginning of this pandemic.
Which again, from his perspective, makes sense. He likely isn't upset that he had fun with his friends and then went home. He's upset that it became a big tool in a national conversation and that people used it to point out hypocrisy, specifically when it came to the medical community and COVID guidelines. Lesson 1 from this is that mixing explanations or rationalizations and apologies does not go well.
Doesn't work.
People who are mad at you don't want to hear your explanations when they're mad. You should never do anything that even remotely resembles shifting blame or justifying yourself during an apology. Just take responsibility and explain how you're going to change in the future because of the mistake. Granted, apologies on the internet just don't go over well in general. I'm sure one day people will be furious at me for something and I'm gonna eat these words. But the second lesson is that we are all dirty hypocrites. Because people are mad at Dr. Mike for making very normal human decisions. It's just ethical fading, which I've made a whole video about. We all make worse ethical decisions when we're in complex social situations, especially when there's factors like friends and gifts and attractive women in bikinis involved. I'm not going to take a stance on whether Dr. Mike was right or wrong, except that it was hypocritical. But all the people who lashed out at him because of it are also hypocrites, because we all do the same thing. We all are prone to ethical fading. It's just that most of us, because we aren't celebrities, have the luxury of doing it somewhat in private. Someone making bad decisions and then apologizing for it isn't really anything special or specific to Dr. Mike. It was just a great example for seeing ethical fading in action. The last thing I want to talk about is actually what made me decide to make this video. This is a more recent video Dr. Mike made addressing some controversy on TikTok. Here, let's watch.
See someone sending me a video saying that CPR is not good or something negative about CPR, of course I'm triggered. That's the natural response. But then what you gotta do is look for the context, the nuance.
This behavior I thought was really cool because it's something that a lot of people don't do enough. We need to slow down and get context. That's especially true on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, where everything is always just cut down a little bit and virtually always taken out of context. Most conflict in this world is born out of misunderstanding. So if we can go a little further to understand each other better, it can help a lot. But there's another thing in this video that I thought was great because it's something that I personally have struggled with.
It seems on the platform, the only things that go viral is when you attack directly another person, you post something controversial, and that shouldn't be the case if you're posting quality content, good content.
This isn't just TikTok. Making videos about controversy or calling out other people for being stupid also works really well on YouTube. I made one video, a short video, talking about an ethics TikTok that I hated, and it performed way better than average for me. And it's so tempting to just talk about all of the ethics scandals and corruption and controversies and the terrible things that people and companies are doing. But I don't want to be that guy. There's already so much negativity. But man, it is hard to pass up on the amount of engagement it brings. And I respect Dr. Mike for not only recognizing that, but consciously choosing to at least make an effort to go down a different path. It's hard. I'll probably still make some videos that have more of a negative framing now and then, but I'm going to try to avoid it. What I would ask from you is to let me know when you see positive things happening in the world. Some of you have done that, and it's been great. If you've made a suggestion and you haven't seen it on the channel yet, I'm either working on it, or it's because I started digging into the research and I found some facts and skeletons that were a little too unsettling to want to cover. But every suggestion helps. It really does. So with your support, I am also going to try to focus on the positive and the uplifting. And together, we can make the world a better place.